I stood in the grand ballroom of a downtown Los Angeles hotel, wearing a dark green gown that cost more than 3 months of my rent. Around me, hundreds of the most powerful people in the Korean business community filled the room. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead. Men in expensive suits spoke in hushed voices. Women in designer dresses moved gracefully between groups. Then he approached me. An older man, maybe in his 50s, with gray hair at his temples. He was a leader from a rival organization. His eyes looked at me in a way that made my skin crawl. He said something in Korean, smiling, and reached his hand toward my shoulder. Before his fingers could touch me, Director Kong moved between us. His hand caught the man's wrist midair. The room went completely silent. "Don't you dare look at him," Kong said to me in English, his voice cold as ice. Then he spoke to the man in Korean. Every person in that ballroom stopped talking and turned to watch us. The older man's face went pale. He pulled back his hand and walked away quickly. Director Kong made an announcement to the entire room in Korean. People looked shocked, then nodded with respect. In that moment, I became untouchable. But how did a simple bookkeeper with a dead father's debt end up being claimed by one of the most dangerous men in Los Angeles? This moment changed my entire life, but the story actually started 2 years earlier. Want to know how an ordinary girl became untouchable in the most dangerous circles of Los Angeles? Before we continue, please subscribe to our channel for more stories like this one. Tomorrow I will be dropping another story you will not want to miss. Your support helps us bring you more powerful stories like this. And to all of you watching from the United States, Australia, Mexico, France, the United Kingdom, Canada, Brazil, Japan, Jamaica, and so many other countries around the world, thank you. Thank you for watching, for engaging with our content, and for being part of this community. You are the reason we can share these stories. We appreciate every single one of you. Now let's begin. Let me take you back to where this all began. 2 years before that moment in the ballroom, I was living a completely different life. I was just a simple bookkeeper working in Koreatown, Los Angeles. Nothing special, nothing exciting, just trying to make enough money to pay my bills and get by. I worked for an elderly Korean man named Mr. Park. He was 72 years old and owned a small import business on West Olympic Boulevard. The office was tiny, just 3 rooms in an old building that had seen better days. Mr. Park spoke broken English, but he had a kind heart. He treated me like I was his own granddaughter. The pay was not great. I made about $30,000 a year, but it was honest work, and that mattered to me. My days were simple. I arrived at 8 in the morning, made coffee, and opened the books. I tracked inventory, managed invoices, paid suppliers, and handled tax documents. When customers came in, I helped them with their orders. When the phone rang, I answered it. At 6 in the evening, I locked up and went home to my small apartment in Westlake. My father had died 2 years before I started working for Mr. Park. He was a good man, the kind of father who worked hard and always tried to do right by his family. He held 2 jobs most of my childhood. He never missed my school events. He taught me to be honest, to work hard, and to stand on my own 2 feet. What he did not teach me was that he had made some terrible business decisions in his final years. He borrowed money to start a business that failed. When that business went under, he borrowed more money to try to save it. The people he borrowed from were not banks. They were not legitimate lenders. They were the kind of people who do not forget debts and do not forgive mistakes. I did not know any of this when he died. I thought his debts died with him. I was wrong. It was a Thursday evening, 3 months after I started working for Mr. Park. The day had been normal, quiet. I was getting ready to close the office. I had just finished entering the day's receipts into the computer when the door opened. 3 men walked in. They wore expensive suits, the kind you see on businessmen in downtown Los Angeles. Their shoes were polished. Their hair was perfectly styled, but their eyes were cold. I knew immediately that these were not regular customers. The youngest one, who looked about 25, stayed by the door. The other 2 walked toward my desk. The taller one had sharp features and moved with confidence. The other was stockier, with thick hands and a scar on his neck. "We are looking for someone," the tall one said. His English was perfect, but I could hear the Korean accent underneath. "Someone who owes a great deal of money." My stomach dropped. I knew right away they were talking about my father. "My father passed away 2 years ago," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Whatever he owed is not my responsibility." The man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. That is not how this works. Your father borrowed $200,000 from our organization. He promised to pay it back. He did not. When someone dies owing money, the debt goes to the family. That means it goes to you. $200,000. The number hit me like a punch to the chest. I could barely breathe. I do not have that kind of money, I told him. It was the truth. I had maybe $3,000 in my bank account. My rent was $900 a month. I drove a car that was 12 years old. There was no way I could ever pay back $200,000. We know, the man said. We have looked into your situation. You make $30,000 a year. You live alone. You have no savings, no assets, no way to pay what you owe. So what do you want from me? I asked. My hands were shaking, so I put them under the desk where they could not see. The debt has been sitting for 2 years, he continued. With interest, you now owe $350,000. $350,000. The number was so large it did not even feel real. I would have to work for more than 10 years without spending a single dollar to pay that back. It was impossible. I cannot pay that, I said quietly. I will never be able to pay that. We understand, the man said. But there are other ways to settle debts. You have skills. You are a bookkeeper. You understand numbers, records, accounting. Our organization has businesses that need someone with your skills. Someone who is trustworthy. Someone who can keep accurate records and keep their mouth shut. I understood what he was saying. They wanted me to work for them, to manage the books for whatever businesses they ran, legal or otherwise. You want me to work for you, I said. We have 17 legitimate businesses in Los Angeles, he explained. Restaurants, import companies, real estate. All legal operations. They all need proper bookkeeping. Work for us for 3 years. Manage our books. Do good work. Keep quiet about what you see. After 3 years, your debt is cleared. You walk away free. 3 years. It sounded both short and impossibly long at the same time. What if I say no? I asked. The man's smile disappeared. Then the debt remains. And debts must be paid, one way or another. We would prefer to use your skills, but there are other ways you could be useful to us. Ways you would not like. The threat was clear. If I did not agree to work for them as a bookkeeper, they would force me to do something else. Something worse. I need time to think, I said. The man reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. He placed it on my desk. You have 24 hours. Call this number tomorrow by 6 in the evening. Tell us your answer. The 3 men left as quickly as they had arrived. I sat alone in that small office, staring at the business card, feeling like my entire world had just collapsed. I went home that night, but I did not sleep. I sat on my couch in my tiny apartment, thinking through my options. I could run. I could pack a bag, get in my car, and drive to another state. Change my name. Start over. But I had heard stories about organizations like this. They had connections everywhere. If they wanted to find someone, they found them. Running would only delay the inevitable. I could go to the police. But what would I tell them? That someone offered me a legal job to pay off my father's debt? No crime had been committed. The police could not help me. I could refuse and face whatever consequences came. But I was not brave enough for that. I did not want to disappear. I did not want to end up doing things that would destroy what was left of my soul. By the time the sun came up Friday morning, I had made my decision. I would take the job. I would work for 3 years. I would pay off my father's debt. I would keep my head down, do my work, and survive. At 2 o'clock that afternoon, I called the number on the card. A woman answered in Korean, then switched to English when I responded. She gave me an address in Koreatown and told me to come at 2 o'clock the next day, Saturday. I wrote down the address and hung up the phone. My hands were still shaking. Little did I know, accepting that offer would put me on a collision course with a man who never let anything go. Saturday afternoon, I drove to the address the woman had given me. It led me to a restaurant called Golden Dragon Palace. I had walked past this place 100 times but never went inside. From the outside, it looked expensive and exclusive. The building mixed traditional Korean design with modern glass and steel. Red and gold colors decorated the entrance. Large windows showed the dining room inside, where I could see crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling and white tablecloths on every table. This was not the kind of place where someone like me ate dinner. I parked my old car down the street and walked to the entrance. My heart was beating fast. I wore the nicest clothes I owned, a simple black dress and flats, but I still felt out of place. A young woman in a professional business suit met me at the door. She looked about my age, with perfect makeup and hair pulled back in a tight bun. She did not smile. "Follow me," she said. She led me through the main dining room. Even though it was only 2 in the afternoon, some tables were occupied. Well-dressed people ate expensive food and spoke in quiet voices. Everyone looked important. Everyone belonged there. I did not. We walked past the kitchen, where I could hear chefs working and smell food cooking. At the back of the restaurant, there was a staircase I had not noticed from the outside. The woman led me up the stairs. At the top was a hallway with several doors. The walls were painted a dark cream color. The carpet was thick and expensive. Everything was clean and professional. The woman knocked on the last door, then opened it without waiting for an answer. She gestured for me to go inside. The office was large. A massive desk sat near the window, which looked out over Olympic Boulevard. Behind the desk sat a man I had not seen before. He was younger than I expected, maybe in his early 30s. He wore a dark blue suit that fit him perfectly. His hair was styled with care. When he looked up at me, his eyes were sharp and focused. There was something about the way he carried himself that made you want to stand up straighter, to be more careful with your words. "Sit down," he said in English, pointing to the chair across from his desk. I sat. The chair was comfortable, but I felt anything but comfortable. "My name is Director Kong," he said. "You are here because your father owed my organization a significant amount of money. That debt now belongs to you. Do you understand?" "Yes," I said quietly. "Do you understand what it means to work for this organization?" he asked, leaning forward. "You will see things. You will hear things. You will know things. You cannot share any of this with anyone. Not friends. Not family. Not the police. Your loyalty must be complete. If you betray this organization, there will be consequences. Serious consequences." His voice was calm, but the threat was clear. "The men who came to my office said the work would be legal," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It will be," he confirmed. "I own 17 legitimate businesses in Los Angeles. Restaurants like this one, import companies, real estate holdings. All of them operate within the law. All of them need proper bookkeeping. That will be your job. You will maintain accurate records. You will manage payroll. You will handle tax documents. Nothing illegal." He paused, his eyes studying my face. "But," he continued, "you will work in buildings where other activities also happen. You will see people you should not see. You will hear conversations you should not hear. Your job is to focus on your work and forget everything else. Can you do that?" I thought about his question. Could I work in a place where I knew illegal things were happening around me, even if I was not directly involved? "Yes," I said. "I can do that." He watched me for a long moment, as if deciding whether to believe me. Finally, he nodded. "You start Monday. 6 days a week. 10 hours a day. You will be paid $50,000 a year. After 3 years, if your work is good and you cause no problems, your debt is cleared. You are free to leave." $50,000. That was $20,000 more than I had ever made. I could actually save money. I could have a life. "One more thing," Director Kong said as I stood to leave. "You will report directly to me. If you have problems, you come to me. If someone bothers you, you tell me. If you need anything, you ask me. Do you understand?" "Yes, Director Kong," I said. "Good. Someone will contact you Sunday evening with instructions for Monday." I left his office and walked back down to the street. My head was spinning. I had just agreed to work for a criminal organization. But what choice did I have? Monday morning, I started my new job. They assigned me to work at the Golden Dragon Palace restaurant, managing their books. The numbers were clean. The tax records were proper. Everything looked legal and professional. I handled invoices from food suppliers, tracked employee hours, managed the payroll system. It was exactly the kind of work I had done before. But around me, in the private dining rooms and back offices, I saw things that told a different story. Men in expensive suits having quiet meetings. Packages being delivered that never appeared on any inventory list. Phone calls in Korean that ended suddenly when anyone walked past. I learned quickly to keep my eyes on my computer screen and my focus on my work. I came in, did my job, and went home. I did not ask questions. I did not make friends. I existed in my own small world, separate from everything happening around me. Every week, Director Kong came to check on my work. He would appear in the office, review my books, and ask if I had any problems. At first, these visits made me nervous, but over time, I realized he was serious about what he had said. He was protecting me. One time, about 2 months into the job, one of his men made an inappropriate comment to me. He suggested I could reduce my debt faster by doing him favors. I felt sick and scared, but I remembered what Director Kong had said. I reported it. The next day, that man was gone. No one mentioned him again. No one explained what happened. He simply disappeared. Another time, someone tried to give me extra work that was not part of my job description. They wanted me to handle some records that looked questionable. I refused and told Director Kong. He personally came to the restaurant and clarified my role in front of everyone. No one tried to add extra work again. I began to understand that within this dangerous organization, I had someone powerful watching over me. As long as I did my job and stayed in my lane, I was safe. For 14 months, this arrangement worked perfectly. I managed books for the restaurant. I saved money. I stayed out of trouble. I counted down the days until my 3 years would be finished. Until the day everything changed. Director Kong decided to expand his business operations to the Harbor District of Los Angeles, near San Pedro. He opened a new import company there, one that actually imported legal goods, electronics, furniture, and household items from Korea. The business needed someone to set up the accounting system from scratch. He chose me for the job. The Harbor District was nothing like Koreatown. Instead of busy streets filled with restaurants and shops, there were massive warehouses, shipping containers stacked high, and the constant sound of trucks moving goods from the docks. The air smelled like salt water and diesel fuel. The buildings were old, industrial, and covered in years of grime. The office where I worked was inside a warehouse near the water. It was a small room with a desk, a computer, filing cabinets, and a window that looked out at shipping containers. The walls were thin. The heating barely worked. It was nothing like the beautiful Golden Dragon Palace restaurant. The people who worked at the warehouse were different too. They were rougher, less polished. Many of them were dock workers who loaded and unloaded shipments. They wore work clothes instead of expensive suits. They spoke loudly and laughed roughly. Some of them looked at me in ways that made me uncomfortable, but no one touched me. Everyone knew I worked for Director Kong. I had been at the harbor location for 3 weeks when trouble found me. It was a Friday afternoon, around 4 o'clock. Most of the warehouse workers had already left for the weekend. I was alone in the office, finishing payroll reports that needed to be done before Monday. The building was quiet except for the hum of my computer and the distant sound of ships in the harbor. The door to my office burst open. 4 men walked in. They were not Korean. They looked Eastern European, maybe Russian or Ukrainian. They were big, heavily built, with hard faces and cold eyes. The leader was the largest of them all. He had a shaved head and a thick scar that ran from his forehead down to his left cheek. He looked like someone who had been in many fights and won most of them. "Where is Kong?" he demanded. His accent was heavy, his English rough. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I stood up from my desk, trying to keep the desk between us. "I do not know," I said. My voice was shaking. "I just work here. I am just a bookkeeper." The scarred man smiled, but there was nothing friendly about it. "You work for Kong. That makes you Kang's property." "I do not know anything about his other business," I said, backing away slowly. "I just handle the books. Legal books. I do not know where he is." "Does not matter," the man said, walking closer to me. His 3 friends spread out, blocking my path to the door. "You come with us. We send Kong a message." They were going to kidnap me. They wanted to use me to get to Director Kong. To hurt him. To send some kind of message in whatever war they were fighting. My mind raced. My phone was in my purse on the desk. If I could just reach it, maybe I could call someone. But the scarred man was too close now. He grabbed my arm hard, his thick fingers digging into my skin. "Do not make this hard, girl," he said. "Just come quietly." I screamed. I screamed as loud as I could, even though I did not think anyone would hear me. Even though I did not think anyone was close enough to help. What happened next was like something from an action movie. The door flew open again. Men poured into the room, Director Kang's men. They moved fast and with purpose, like they had trained for exactly this situation. The fight was quick and brutal. Punches were thrown. Bodies hit the floor. The scarred man let go of my arm to defend himself, but it was too late. Within 2 minutes, all 4 intruders were on the ground, held down by Kang's men. Then Director Kong walked through the door. I had never seen him like this before. His face was calm, completely controlled, but his eyes were like ice. Cold, dangerous, terrifying. He walked straight to me, stepping over the men on the floor like they were nothing. "Are you hurt?" he asked. His voice was gentle, completely different from the look in his eyes. His hands reached for my arm, checking where the man had grabbed me. I could already see a bruise forming on my skin. "No," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I am okay." He nodded, then turned to look at the scarred man on the floor. 2 of Kang's men held him down, pressing his face against the concrete. Director Kong walked over and crouched down, so he was at eye level with the scarred man. He spoke in a language I did not understand, Russian maybe. His voice was quiet, calm, almost casual. But whatever he said made the scarred man's face go white with fear. The tough criminal who had tried to kidnap me moments ago now looked like he wanted to cry. Director Kong stood up and turned back to me. "Pack your things," he said. "You are not working from this location anymore. You are coming back to the main office. You will work from there from now on." I did not argue. I grabbed my purse and my jacket and followed him out of that warehouse. I did not look back at the men on the floor. I did not want to know what would happen to them. As we drove back to Koreatown in his expensive black car, Director Kong was quiet. His jaw was tight. His hands gripped the steering wheel hard. He was angry, not at me but at the situation, at the men who had tried to take me, at himself maybe for putting me in danger. "I am sorry," he finally said. "That should not have happened. I should have had more security at that location. It will not happen again." I did not know what to say, so I just nodded. After that day, everything between us began to shift in ways I did not understand. Director Kong moved me to his main office the very next day. Instead of working alone in different locations around the city, I now worked in a small office just down the hall from his. The room had a window that looked out over Olympic Boulevard, a comfortable desk, and everything I needed to do my job. He told me it was for security reasons. After what happened at the harbor warehouse, he did not trust my safety at remote locations anymore. I understood that. It made sense. But something else was different too. Something I could not quite explain. His protection became more intense. Every day, lunch was delivered to my office. Good food from the restaurant downstairs, the kind that regular employees did not get. When I finished work in the evening, one of his drivers was always waiting to take me home. It did not matter if I said I could take the bus or drive myself. The driver was there every single night. Director Kong himself became more present in my daily life. He stopped by my office more often, not just for weekly check-ins, but sometimes just to ask how I was doing. He asked about my work. He asked about my health. He asked if I needed anything. The other members of his organization started treating me differently too. When they spoke to me, there was a level of respect in their voices that seemed too much for a simple bookkeeper. They bowed their heads slightly when they passed me in the hallway. They called me Miss, instead of just using my name. They moved out of my way when I walked past. I did not understand what was happening. I was just an employee working off her father's debt. Why was everyone treating me like I was someone important? About a month after the warehouse incident, Director Kong told me about the annual summer gathering. Once a year, he explained, all the Korean business owners in Los Angeles came together for a large networking event. It was part business meeting, part social gathering. Important people from both the legitimate business world and the underground organizations would be there. "You should attend," he said. It was not really a request. It was more like a gentle command. "You are my personal accountant now. It would be appropriate for you to be there." I wanted to say no. I was not the kind of person who went to fancy events. I did not own clothes nice enough for something like that. I would not know anyone there. I would not fit in. But before I could make any excuse, a package arrived at my apartment the day before the event. Inside was a beautiful dark green gown. The fabric was soft and expensive. It was the most gorgeous piece of clothing I had ever touched. There was a note inside the box, written in neat handwriting. "For tomorrow evening." The dress probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. I felt strange wearing it, like I was pretending to be someone I was not. But I put it on and went to the event. The gathering was held at a grand hotel in downtown Los Angeles. When I walked into the ballroom, I felt completely out of place. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. Hundreds of people filled the room. Men in expensive suits, women in designer dresses, everyone looking wealthy and powerful. I recognized some faces from my work, but most were strangers. I stood near the entrance, unsure of what to do or where to go. Within minutes, Director Kong appeared at my side. He looked different tonight, more sophisticated, more powerful. He wore a formal black suit that fit him perfectly. "Stay close to me tonight," he said quietly. "There are many people here. Not all of them are friendly." He offered me his arm. I took it. We walked through the crowd together. People moved aside to let us pass. They nodded respectfully at Director Kong and looked at me with curious eyes. I felt like everyone was watching us, wondering who I was and why I was with him. We stopped near the bar. Director Kong was talking to someone when I noticed an older man approaching us. He was maybe in his 50s, with gray hair at his temples and expensive rings on his fingers. From the way people treated him, I could tell he was important, probably a leader from another organization. He spoke to Director Kong in Korean, but his eyes kept moving to me. The way he looked at me made my skin crawl. It was the kind of look that made you feel dirty, like you needed to take a shower. Director Kong answered him shortly. His voice was cold, but the older man laughed and said something else. Then he reached out his hand toward my shoulder. Before his fingers could touch me, Director Kong moved between us. His hand shot out and caught the older man's wrist in midair. The grip looked painful. The entire ballroom went silent. Every conversation stopped. Every person turned to watch. "Don't you dare look at him," Director Kong said to me in English, his voice cold and commanding. Then he spoke to the older man in Korean. His words were quiet but sharp. The older man's face went from confident to shocked to pale in just a few seconds. He pulled his hand back, mumbled something that sounded like an apology, and quickly walked away. Director Kong did not let go of my arm. Instead, he turned to face the entire room. He made an announcement in Korean, speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. I did not understand the words, but I understood the reaction. People looked shocked at first, then surprised, then accepting. They began nodding, some of them bowing slightly in our direction. I had no idea what he said, but I knew it was important. I knew it changed something fundamental about my position in this world. Later, someone would explain it to me. Director Kong had publicly declared his protection over me. He had announced to every powerful person in the Korean community of Los Angeles that I belonged to him, that anyone who disrespected me was disrespecting him, that I was untouchable. In that single moment, in front of hundreds of witnesses, he had claimed me. But what did this claiming really mean? And what would it cost me? After the event ended, Director Kong drove me home himself. This was unusual. He normally had one of his drivers take me places. But tonight, he was behind the wheel of his expensive black car, and I sat in the passenger seat beside him. We did not speak during the drive. The streets of Los Angeles passed by outside the window. Lights from restaurants, people walking on sidewalks, the normal life of a city that had no idea what had just happened in that ballroom. When we arrived at my apartment building, he parked the car but did not unlock the doors. We sat there in silence for a long moment. The engine was off. The only sound was the distant noise of traffic. "I need to explain what happened tonight," he finally said. His voice was quieter than usual, less commanding, almost uncertain. "You claimed me," I said, "like I was your property." He shook his head. "Not like property, like someone precious, someone worth protecting." I turned to look at him. In the dim light from the street lamps, his face looked different, softer, more human. "In my world," he continued, "there are rules that regular people do not understand. There are hierarchies, ways of communicating without using words. What I did tonight, announcing my protection over you in front of everyone, it sends a message. It tells every person in the Korean organizations in this city that you are untouchable. That hurting you means hurting me. That disrespecting you means disrespecting me." "But why?" I asked. "I am just working off my father's debt. I am nobody important. Why would you do that for me?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring out the windshield at the dark street. "At first, you were just debt repayment," he admitted. "A skilled worker fulfilling an obligation. Nothing more. But over these months, I have watched you. I have seen how you work. I have seen who you are." "Who am I?" I asked. "You are honest," he said simply. In a world full of liars, you tell the truth. You are brave, even though you are afraid. You do good work without trying to take advantage of your position. You do not want power. You do not want to climb higher in this organization. You just want to do your job and be left alone. He turned to look at me directly. Do you know how rare that is? Everyone in my world wants something. They are always calculating, always looking for ways to gain more power, more money, more influence. But you are different. You do not play those games. That makes you valuable. That makes you worth protecting. The man at the party tonight, I said. Who was he? He leads a rival organization, Director Kong explained. He was testing me. He wanted to see if you mattered to me or if you were just another employee. If I had let him touch you, if I had let him disrespect you, it would have shown weakness. Others would have tried the same thing. But now, after tonight, everyone knows. No one will touch you. I thought about this for a moment. In one evening, I had gone from being invisible to being marked. Everyone in the Korean underworld now knew my face, knew that I belonged to Director Kong. Was that a good thing or a bad thing? What if I do not want to be claimed? I asked quietly. He looked at me, and for a moment, I saw past the powerful organization leader to the man underneath. There was something in his eyes that looked almost vulnerable. Then you say so, he said. I will announce tomorrow that it was only for business purposes, that it meant nothing personal. But you will still have my protection until your debt is paid. That does not change. I nodded slowly. I need time to think. Take all the time you need, he said. I went home that night with so many thoughts racing through my mind. I did not sleep well. Over the next 3 days, I kept thinking about what had happened, about what it meant, about what I wanted. I remembered the small things I had seen over the past 14 months. The way Director Kong treated the elderly Korean women who worked in his restaurants. Always with respect and kindness. The way he quietly paid for the medical treatment when one worker's child got very sick. The way he handled disputes fairly, never taking advantage of those weaker than himself. Yes, he was a criminal. His organization did illegal things. I was not blind to that. But he also followed a code of honor that was strict and unbending. He protected the people who worked for him. He kept his word. In his own way, he was more honest than many supposedly good people I had known in my life. 3 days after the event, I went to his office. About what you said, I began, standing in front of his desk. About being claimed. He looked up, his face carefully showing no emotion. Yes, I do not want you to take it back, I said. Your protection. I appreciate it. I want to keep it. Something changed in his eyes. A warmth appeared that I had never seen before. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly, almost a smile. Good, he said simply. What started as protection slowly became something neither of us expected. The 2 years that followed were strange and complicated in ways I never could have predicted. I continued my work as Director Kang's personal accountant, but my role grew beyond just managing books and numbers. He started asking for my opinion on business decisions. When he considered opening a new restaurant location, he brought me the financial projections and asked what I thought. When a real estate opportunity came up, he wanted to know if the investment made sense. He listened to my advice. He valued my input. He treated me less like an employee and more like a partner. The lines between our professional relationship and something personal became blurred. I could not explain exactly when it happened or how. It just slowly changed, like the seasons shifting from summer to fall, without you noticing the exact moment. Director Kong became part of my life outside of work. When I caught the flu and could not come to the office for 3 days, he showed up at my apartment with soup made by the chef from Golden Dragon Palace. He did not just send it with a driver. He brought it himself, knocked on my door, and made sure I had everything I needed. You need to take care of yourself, he said, standing in my small apartment living room. He looked out of place there, this powerful man in his expensive suit, surrounded by my cheap furniture and old decorations. On weekends, sometimes he invited me to art galleries and museums. He loved traditional Korean art, old paintings, pottery, and calligraphy. He would stand in front of a piece for long minutes, just looking at it, and then explain to me what made it special, what the artist was trying to communicate. He taught me Korean phrases, so I could understand some of what was said around me. Simple things at first, greetings, basic words, polite expressions. He was patient when I struggled with the pronunciation. He smiled when I finally got something right. His protection over me was absolute. Everyone in the organization knew it. Everyone in the rival organizations knew it. I was completely safe in a world that was very dangerous. One evening, about 18 months after the claiming, I was driving home from work when a drunk driver ran a red light and hit the side of my car. The impact was not too bad. My car was damaged, but I was mostly okay, just shaken up. The drunk driver got out of his car, yelling and angry instead of apologetic. When I asked for his insurance information, he became aggressive. He grabbed my arm roughly and told me it was my fault, that I should pay for his damages. Other drivers had stopped to help, and someone called the police. Within 30 minutes, Director Kong arrived. I had not called him. Someone from his organization must have been nearby and saw what happened. He came with his lawyer, both of them in a black car that pulled up beside the accident scene. The drunk driver was still yelling, still being aggressive. Director Kong walked straight to him and said something in a low voice. I could not hear the words, but the drunk driver immediately stepped back, his face going pale. He stopped yelling. He stopped moving. He just stood there, quiet and afraid. When the police arrived, the drunk driver was arrested for assault and driving under the influence. Director Kang's lawyer handled everything with the police report and insurance. I did not have to do anything. 2 days later, a new car appeared in my apartment parking spot. It was nicer than my old car, safer, with better features. I tried to protest. It was too expensive. I could not accept such a gift. You are mine to protect, Director Kong said simply. That includes making sure you are safe when you drive. The car is not a gift. It is a necessity. I stopped arguing. I learned that when he made decisions about my safety, there was no point in fighting him. The comfort I found in his protection surprised me. I had spent my whole life being independent, taking care of myself, not relying on anyone. But there was something peaceful about knowing someone was watching over me. Someone who would come if I needed help. Someone who would make sure I was safe. We never talked about what we were to each other. Were we friends? Were we more than that? The question hung between us, unspoken. Neither of us tried to define it. Maybe because defining it would make it too real. Maybe because the uncertainty was safer than the truth. But I knew I had feelings for him. Feelings that went beyond gratitude, beyond professional respect. When he walked into a room, my heart beat faster. When he smiled at me, which was rare, I felt warm inside. When he stood close to me, I was aware of every inch of distance between us. I never said any of this out loud, and neither did he. But sometimes, I caught him looking at me in a way that made me think he felt it too. Something growing between us that neither of us knew how to handle. Then came the day my 3 years were finally complete. 3 years to the exact day from when I signed the agreement to work for Director Kang's organization. He called me to his office. I knew what this meeting was about. My debt was paid. My obligation was finished. I was free to leave. I walked down the hallway to his office with mixed feelings swirling inside me. Part of me felt relief. I had survived 3 years in a dangerous world. I had paid off a debt that seemed impossible to pay. I could walk away now, start fresh, build a normal life. But another part of me felt something else. Something I did not want to examine too closely. I knocked on his door. He told me to come in. When I entered, he was sitting behind his desk, looking at some papers. He gestured for me to sit in the chair across from him. He slid a document across the desk toward me. Your debt is paid, he said. His voice was professional, almost formal. This letter states that you and your family owe nothing to this organization. You are free to go. Free to live your life however you choose. I picked up the document and looked at it. Official stamps. Legal signatures. 3 years of my life summed up in a single piece of paper. I should have felt joy. I should have felt excited about my freedom. Instead, I felt conflicted, confused, uncertain. What if I do not want to go? I asked quietly, still looking at the paper in my hands. He looked up sharply. What? I met his eyes. What if I want to stay? Keep working for you. Not because of the debt, but because I choose to. He leaned back in his chair, studying my face. This is not a good life. You have been protected, sheltered from the worst parts of it. But it is a dangerous world. People get hurt. People disappear. You could have a normal life now. A safe life. Why would you choose to stay? I thought about how to explain it. How to put into words what I had been feeling for months. Because in 3 years, you have been more honest with me than most people are in a lifetime, I said. Because you have protected me and respected me and treated me like I matter. Because I trust you. And because I think I can help you build something better. Better how? He asked. You have been expanding your legitimate businesses, I said. The restaurants are doing well. The real estate investments are profitable. What if you focus more on those? What if you slowly moved away from the illegal operations and became fully legitimate? It would take years, maybe decades, but it is possible. You could build something that lasts. Something you could be proud of in the open, not just in the shadows. He stood up and walked to the window, looking down at Olympic Boulevard below. For a long time, he said nothing. I waited, my heart beating hard in my chest. That would require giving up power, he finally said. Giving up influence and control. Many people in my organization would resist. Some would see it as weakness. But you are the director, I said. You make the final decisions. And think about it. Would it not be better to build something that could last for generations? Something legal and stable? Something that does not put you at risk of arrest or violence every day. He turned to look at me. If you stay, it cannot be as just an employee anymore. You know too much. You are too close to the center of everything. You would have to be truly part of this. Part of me. Do you understand what that means? I stood up and walked over to join him at the window. I think so. It means you are choosing this life, he said. Choosing me. Choosing all the complications and dangers that come with it. It means there is no going back to normal. Are you sure this is what you want? I thought about my father, about the debt that had brought me to this moment. He had made bad choices, yes. But those choices had led me here. To this office. To this man. To this unexpected place in my life. Maybe everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to. I am sure, I said. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he reached out and took my hand. It was the first time he had ever held my hand like this. Not to check if I was hurt, not to guide me through a crowd, but just to hold it. His grip was warm and strong. Then we do this together, he said. We build something better, something that lasts. Together, I agreed. He smiled then, a real smile that reached his eyes. You are either very brave or very foolish. Maybe both, I said, and for the first time in 3 years, I laughed in his office. Her choice to stay became the catalyst for real change. The months that followed my decision to stay were transformative. Director Kong began quietly shifting the focus of his organization toward legitimate business operations. It was not easy. Change never is, especially in a world built on old traditions and established power structures. Some of the older members of the organization resisted. They had spent decades doing things a certain way. They did not understand why Director Kong would want to give up profitable illegal operations for legitimate businesses that made less money and required more work. They questioned his decisions in private meetings. They grumbled about going soft. Rival organizations saw the shift as weakness at first. They tested boundaries, pushed into territories they thought Kong was abandoning. There were conflicts. There were confrontations. But Director Kong was strategic and patient. He maintained enough of the old operations to keep his position secure, while steadily building up the legal businesses. We opened more restaurants across California. First in Los Angeles, then in San Diego, then in San Francisco. Each location was fully legitimate, properly licensed, paying all taxes. We hired good chefs, trained professional staff, and created restaurants that people actually wanted to visit. The real estate investments grew too. We bought apartment buildings and renovated them, creating safe housing for immigrant families. We purchased commercial properties and rented them to small business owners. Everything was legal. Everything was documented. Everything was clean. The import business expanded to actually import legitimate goods, Korean food products, household items, electronics. We built relationships with manufacturers in Korea and distributors across the United States. It was real business, the kind that could grow without fear of police raids or federal investigations. The younger members of the organization embraced these changes. They saw opportunities their parents' generation never had. They could work in legitimate businesses, build real careers, have lives that did not involve constantly looking over their shoulders. They respected Director Kong even more for giving them this path. Slowly, over months and years, the balance shifted. The illegal operations shrank. The legitimate businesses grew. It was like turning a massive ship. You could not do it quickly without everything falling apart, but with patience and careful strategy, you could change direction. Now, 5 years after my debt was officially paid, the organization is almost unrecognizable from what it was when I first started. 60% of our operations are completely legitimate. We own 15 restaurant locations across California. Our real estate holdings are substantial and entirely legal. We have created hundreds of jobs for people who needed opportunities. Immigrants like my father once was, people looking for a chance to build better lives. The illegal operations still exist. I will not pretend otherwise. But they are shrinking, slowly being replaced by legal alternatives. Director Kong knows that complete transformation will take time, maybe another decade, but the direction is clear. My relationship with Director Kong has evolved into something I cannot easily label. We are business partners. We are friends. We are something deeper that we have never put into words. We spend our days working side by side, building this new vision together. We spend our evenings sometimes sharing meals, talking about plans for the future, or simply sitting in comfortable silence. We still have not defined what we are to each other. Maybe we never will. Maybe some relationships do not need labels. Maybe what matters is not the name we give it, but the reality of what we have built together. As for me personally, I have discovered things about myself I never knew. I am braver than I thought. When faced with difficult decisions, I do not run away. I am smarter than I believed. My ideas have helped transform an entire organization. I am stronger than I imagined. I survived 3 years in a dangerous world and chose to stay for 5 more. There are lessons in my story that apply to anyone, no matter what situation you are facing in your own life. First, your greatest challenges can lead to unexpected opportunities. My father's debt felt like a curse, a burden that would destroy my life. Instead, it led me to discover strengths I did not know I had and to a life I never could have imagined. When something difficult happens to you, look for the opportunity hidden inside it. Second, people are more complex than they first appear. Director Kong was a criminal, yes, but he was also honorable, protective, and capable of real change. In life, you will meet people who do not fit into simple categories of good or bad. Learn to see the full complexity of others. It will help you make better decisions about who to trust. Third, true protection comes from mutual respect. Director Kong did not protect me because I was weak or because he owned me. He protected me because I proved myself trustworthy and capable. I earned respect through my work and my integrity. The best relationships in life, whether in business, friendship, or family, are built on mutual respect, not power or control. Fourth, change is possible, even in the most unlikely circumstances. An entire criminal organization began shifting toward legitimate business because one person had a vision for something better. This shows that real change is always possible if someone is willing to work for it patiently and strategically. Never believe that situations cannot improve. They can if you are willing to put in the work. Fifth, freedom is more than just the absence of obligation. When my debt was paid, I was technically free. But I realized that real freedom is about making choices that align with your values and goals. I chose to stay not because I had to, but because it was where I wanted to be. That choice, made freely, was more powerful than any forced obligation. True freedom is about choosing your path, not just escaping your circumstances. Sixth, integrity matters everywhere. Whether I was working in a small office or in the headquarters of a dangerous organization, I maintained my honesty and ethical standards. I did not participate in illegal activities. I did not compromise my values. That consistency actually gave me influence and protection. Your character is your most valuable asset, no matter where you are or what you are doing. Seventh, sometimes the right choice is not the safe choice. Staying with Director Kang's organization was not safe. It was not the smart choice by conventional standards. But it was the right choice for me because it allowed me to make a real difference and to build something meaningful. Life is not always about choosing the safest path. Sometimes it is about choosing the path where you can make the most impact. My life turned out nothing like I planned. I thought I would work a simple job, pay off my debt, and disappear into a quiet, normal existence. Instead, I became part of something complex and challenging, something that tests me every day and pushes me to grow. The power was not in Director Kong claiming me that night in the ballroom. The real power was in my choice to accept it, to stay, to build something better. That choice, made freely and deliberately, defined the direction of my life. For anyone watching this story, Understand that you will face moments of choice too. Moments where the safe path is clear, but the right path is uncertain. Moments where you have to decide who you are and what you stand for. Moments where you have to trust yourself even when the outcome is unknown. Your choices define you more than your circumstances ever will. My father's debt did not define me. Being claimed by a powerful man did not define me. What defined me was how I responded to these situations, the choices I made, the person I decided to be. If you are facing difficult circumstances right now, remember this. You are not your situation. You are the choices you make within that situation. Choose wisely. Choose bravely. Choose according to your values, not your fears. Thank you for watching this story. If it spoke to you, if it made you think about your own life and choices, please subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring you more powerful stories like this one. We have more stories coming. Stories of people who faced impossible situations and found unexpected paths forward. To everyone watching from the United States, Australia, Mexico, France, the United Kingdom, Canada, Brazil, Japan, Jamaica, and all around the world, you are the reason we do this. Your comments, your engagement, your support mean everything to us. You are not just viewers. You are part of this community. We appreciate every single one of you. Remember, your story is not finished yet. The choices you make today will shape who you become tomorrow. Make them count.